The weather is finally warming up, and that means barbecue season is upon us. I've noticed recently in the stores that pork is probably the least expensive meat on the market. That's great for me because I love pork. As I've mentioned many times over the years, we still don't have a barbecue grill, but that's okay because I know I can get great flavors in the oven. However, if you have a grill, you're gonna love these recipes to add some extra flavor. Just follow the recipe up until I put the ribs in the oven and just throw them on the grill instead. Also, if I cut the ribs up into individual segments to marinate, just don't do that. Just marinate the full rack so that you can flip the racks easily on the grill. For something different than your favorite barbecue sauce, try these 4 Asian flavored rib recipes: sticky Asian ribs, Vietnamese ribs, Hoisin BBQ ribs, and Char Siu ribs. Happy grilling. Let's get started. We have 5.5 pounds of pork back ribs. You can use side ribs, baby back ribs, country style ribs, whatever kind you like, so long as it's pork, because that will be what goes best with this rub. I'm starting off with a tablespoon of kosher salt. This is a teaspoon, so bear with me. 3 teaspoons equals 1 tablespoon. 1 tablespoon of paprika. 1 teaspoon of ground ginger. Oh, I thought I had more in there. Okay, so whatever I have in here. If you have a teaspoon, that's great. 1 teaspoon of onion powder. 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and about 1 teaspoon of freshly ground pepper, or until your hand gets tired. That should be good enough. I'm just going to stir it up. I find using a rub actually makes the ribs more flavorful before putting it in the Instant Pot, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to use half of it on 1 slab, and the other half. You know, I'm making a huge mess here on the floor.
That would be behind the scenes look.
I'm just going to rub it in. And I'm going to cut them into slabs of about 3 to 4 ribs each. That just makes it easier to get them into the pot and also for serving. I already have a cup of water inside the Instant Pot along with a trivet, and we're just going to lay these kind of on top. Oh, by the way, I've already removed the silver skin from the back, just in case anyone was wondering. And the last piece. Okay. Locking the lid into place, making sure the sealing knob is on sealing, and we're going to cook these on high pressure for 15 minutes. I like them with a little bit of tug on the bones, but if you want them more fall off the bone, then I would give it at least 18 to 20 minutes. It's up to you. While the ribs are cooking, and by the way, I am using a 6-quart Instant Pot. As you can see, the ribs fit just nicely in there. If you want to use an 8-quart, that's totally fine as well. If you're using a 3-quart, you might have to cut down that recipe. Let's start making the sauce while the ribs are cooking. I'm going to use a 1/4 cup of hoisin sauce, 1/4 cup of oyster sauce, 1/4 cup of honey, 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of crushed red pepper, or however much you want to taste.
Oh, I sense the heat.
It's gonna be sweet and spicy. And a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. And we're just going to whisk all this together, and that's your sauce. All right, so it's really not that thick when you mix everything together. All right, I quick released the pressure, and let's see. Oh, they look good. Let's see that the rub is still on them, so there's flavor. And I've lined a sheet pan with some aluminum foil. Normally I would line it with parchment paper because I don't really like using aluminum, but I'm totally out of parchment paper, and this is probably safer anyways.
And for the UK folks, it's aluminium.
I'm just gonna put them upside down so that I can baste the underside with the sauce. I usually get my fill of barbecue ribs at the Peony, which is a yearly fair that we have here. But this year it's been canceled due to the pandemic, but that's okay. We can make delicious ribs at home. I'm just gonna lightly brush the underside and just put them under the broiler for about 3 minutes, and then I'm gonna flip them over and sauce up the other side. Right, 3 minutes under the broiler. All right, see, that was only 3 minutes under the broiler. On the grill, it would be like amazing. I wish we had a grill. How come we don't have a grill?
Is that a hint?
So now I'm really gonna sauce them up. So I made a whole cup of this.
So you're gonna spread it on liberally,
Yeah,
girl.
so let's use it up.
Excuse me, you missed a section. Right?
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me, you missed another section.
Oh my goodness, are you like the barbecue sauce police?
I'm just trying to help you out, girl, because you said you want to use up all the sauce, so I'm just
Yeah,
trying
okay,
to
all
help
right,
you
all
out.
right,
Okay?
all right. Okay, I still have some sauce left. Let's get it all on there. Did I miss any spots, dude?
Not that I can see. Oh, actually, yeah. No, you got it. Accidentally.
Don't waste.
Yes.
All right, now we're gonna keep this under the broiler for 5 minutes to get even more caramelization all over it. If you have roasted sesame seeds, this is awesome because I can just shake it over top. And one thing that I don't have is cilantro, but I wanted to chop up some cilantro for this too. Today we are going to combine some of my favorite Vietnamese flavors and make Vietnamese style ribs. Starting with back ribs here, I've already segmented them into individual bone segments, and I've taken off the silver skin on the back. And if you don't know how to do that, you can check out one of my other videos on pork ribs, and I can show you how to remove that skin. I have 5.5 pounds of ribs here. You don't have to use as much. You can double the recipe and make more depending on how many people you're trying to feed. But this will feed probably 4 to 6 people. All we need to do for this recipe is to make a marinade, and I'm going to make it in my blender, but you can just chop up all the ingredients if you don't have a blender into very fine pieces, or you can use a food processor. It's totally up to you. I'm using 2 shallots. And if you don't have shallots, you can always use onion. I'm just gonna throw them into the blender as is because the blender's gonna do its thing. And I have about 6 cloves of garlic here. You can use as little or as much as you like. Also just throw them into the blender.
Also using 2 stalks of lemongrass. And for lemongrass, you're only using the very bottom of the stalks. That's where all the flavor is and the most tender part. So you're going to use about maybe 3 inches, 4 inches. And the rest of this is discarded. And these I do want to chop down to help the blender blend them up better, more easily. Okay, and all of this is also going in. And chilies, it all depends on how spicy you want it. We're just going to use 1 in the sauce, and the other 2 I'm going to slice up for garnish later. I'm just going to toss that in. Using a 1/4 cup of dark soy sauce. And if you don't have dark, you can just use regular soy sauce.
That's so exact, Flo.
I know, right? I should just do what I usually do, eyeball it. 1/4 cup of fish sauce. And a 1/4 cup of water. And a 1/4 cup of sugar. I love Vietnamese food because it's always about the balance of all the different flavors. Sweet and spicy and salty and what's the other one? Sour. Right, and let's blend it up. Plugging it in would help, huh?
Yeah.
All right, let's try that again. All right, that should be good. So I'm gonna make this look like a crime scene, but I don't wanna touch that sauce because it has the chili in it. Okay, gonna pour all of it on here. And then I'm gonna save about 1/2 cup that I'm gonna use for basting later. Oh my goodness, it smells so good. So this marinade, you just want it kind of all over the ribs. And because I'm only going to marinate this for about an hour, that's why I cut them up into segments so that you don't have to marinate it as long. If you were going to do a whole rack of rib, you can totally do that as well. And just let it marinate longer. The longer you let it marinate though, the more flavorful it's gonna be. I'm gonna stick this in the fridge for an hour. All right, so the ribs have been marinating for actually about an hour and a half. And I'm using my electric pressure cooker to cook the ribs because I find that this is the best way and fastest way to get ribs done. You can do these in the oven if you want. It'll just take longer. So I already have a trivet in there along with a cup of water at the bottom. Okay, putting the lid on, locking it into place, making sure this sealing knob is on sealing. And we are going to high pressure for 15 minutes. If you want them more fall off the bone, then I would suggest about 18 to 20 minutes, but we like our ribs to have the meat kind of still sticking to the bone so that there's a little bit of tug so that you can actually hold a rib and eat it without the meat completely falling off. I'm using a 6-quart pressure cooker today, and I know that it fits 2 full racks of ribs in there. If you have a bigger one, you feel more comfortable, by all means, you can use that same amount of time. But if you're doing this in the oven, the rule is slow and low to get a fall off the bone type of rib. So if you're going to cook it in the oven, I would put the ribs down on your pan, cover it tightly with aluminum foil, and let it bake at maybe 300 for about an hour and a half to 2 hours at the very least, and check it from there. And if it's not quite fall off the bone or to the tenderness that you like it, you can always leave it in there for a little longer. But this is why I love the pressure cooker. It's just gonna infuse the meat using pressure with more flavor in a short amount of time, and we can get dinner on the table in no time.
Oh, it's done.
Yep. quick releasing the pressure. That was good, right? Not too frightening. All right, let's see what we've got. I know they don't look like much right now, but the smell is amazing. Okay, I'm gonna take them out. I've already lined a sheet pan. I have a full size here, and the reason why the parchment paper is crumply is because when you crumple parchment paper and then lay it down, it actually stays in place. Not like when it's straight out of the box, it kind of slips and slides on the pan. So,
And it also wants to curl up on itself again.
yeah. So I'm gonna lay these down and we're gonna stick these under the broiler. So at this point, if you have a grill, you can always just throw them on the grill, and that would be super yummy, but we don't have a grill. So I'm doing this under the broiler. Remember, we saved that marinade. I'm just gonna stir it up. Then we're gonna baste the ribs with this. And again, if you're doing it on the grill, you do the same. Look at that. And once this goes under the broiler, it's gonna be so, so good. So have the broiler preheating on high. We're gonna stick it under there for 3 to 5 minutes. Oh my goodness, doesn't that look so much better? Right, flipping these over so we can brown the other side. I don't have much marinade left, but it'll be fine. It'll still be super tasty because we use the pressure cooker to infuse the marinade into the meat even further while cooking. It'll be good.
Oh, you have so little left.
I know, I'm just going to lightly get them if I can.
Everyone gets a little bit.
That's right. Or maybe this pale one can have a little bit more.
Wow, you're so generous.
Another 3 to 5 minutes on the other side.
Oh boy.
I totally wish that you guys could smell this. It is so aromatic. It is so delicious smelling. Just yummy.
And very pleasing to the eye with the color.
Yeah, so if you had this on a grill, can you even imagine? Not done yet. So I've chopped up some cilantro, and if you don't like cilantro, you don't have to do this part, but to just add some freshness to this, it will be so delicious. And if you don't have cilantro or you don't like cilantro, you can always use green onions. That'd be yummy. And some chili. Remember I chopped up some chili earlier? I like putting a rub on my ribs first because it does infuse it with so much more flavor. So I'm starting with 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, and 2 teaspoons of paprika. You can use spicy or sweet, totally up to you. Of course, the flavor will be different depending on what you use. And 1 teaspoon of freshly ground pepper, or grind as much as you want until your hands get tired. Oh, that pepper smells so good. Okay, give it a good stir. That's it, that's your rub. I have almost 4 pounds worth of pork back ribs. I've already taken off that silver skin on the back, and that just allows for the flavors to be absorbed into the meat better. And I know that this rack is gonna fit in my 6-quart Instant Pot. So I'm just gonna put some of the rub on the back, rub it in. Oh my goodness, the cats are going nutso. And we're going to do the other side as well. So the pressure cooker is going to infuse the flavor by just pressing the flavor into the meat. But if you're not using a pressure cooker, I know you guys would be preparing your meat in a different way before you put it on the grill. So however you want to make it, that is totally up to you. You can cook it slowly in the oven, or you can boil it. If you're gonna boil it, actually, I wouldn't put the rub on. I mean, if you don't want to do this part, I think you would still get a really yummy rib just using the sauce. All right, I'm just gonna coil this up and put this, I already have a cup of water at the bottom. I'm gonna actually get the rest of this rub that's left on my chopping board, just kind of on parts that I might have missed. Putting the lid on, locking into place, making sure the sealing knob is on a sealing. We're going to cook it for 15 minutes on high pressure. We cook it for 15 minutes because we like to have a little bit of a tug when we take a bite into our ribs. If you want it to be more tender, I would suggest 18 minutes, and if you want it fall off the bones, then 20 minutes on high pressure. While the ribs are cooking, we are going to make our sauce. I am using half of an onion that I'm going to slice up and chop up. 2 cloves of garlic, but you can use as little or as much as you want. You can use a garlic press to press it if you'd like. All right, this is good. I'm using a small bunch of cilantro for garnish. If you don't like cilantro, you don't have to use this. You can use green onions if you like. I just want to add a little bit of freshness when we eat our ribs. In a small pot, we're going to heat it up on medium heat, adding a tablespoon of oil, adding my onions. I'm going to saute this for about 2 to 3 minutes until the onions are softened and translucent. Okay, now I'm adding my garlic. I just want to cook this for about 30 seconds, just until you start to smell the fragrance of the garlic. Now adding half a cup of hoisin sauce. Quarter cup of ketchup. Give this a stir. And turn down my heat. Quarter cup of honey. 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar. And 3 tablespoons of rice wine. We're going to let that simmer for about 5 to 10 minutes, just until it's reduced and thickens a little bit. So I'm using the rice vinegar just to add a little bit of tang because it's got, well, it's vinegar, versus the rice wine is for flavor. So I am using just regular rice wine. You can use the Shaoxing wine that I use a lot of in my recipes. I just find that this rice wine is not as strong tasting, has a different flavor than the Shaoxing wine, which is brown in color, and it's just has a different aroma to it. And this white one is just more neutral. All right, they don't look like much now, but after we get that sauce on, it's gonna look amazing. So the sauce has reduced a bit, it's thickened. I'm gonna turn off the heat now. So you can always taste it to adjust the flavors. If you want it to be more vinegary, add more of the rice vinegar, more ketchup, more hoisin, it's totally up to you. Or even more honey to make it more sweet. You adjust it to however you like.
Or chili for heat.
Oh, you would like that, huh? That's not happening here. We find that whenever we cut up meat, people eat less. And that's good because we really shouldn't be eating as much as we do if we were served 4 ribs altogether or half a rack. You would totally eat half a rack if you were given half a rack, wouldn't you?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so I'm going to cut these ribs down where in between the bones, if I can find the bones. Oh, just so you know, because I don't think I mentioned, I did quick release the pressure from the pressure cooker, but you could let it natural release. It's totally up to you. I have never really found a difference between the two. So I would just quick release because, you know, I can't be bothered with waiting. I'm going to put these off to the side, well, as best as I can. Look at how juicy they are. All that juice is from the ribs from cutting it up. And we're going to put the sauce kind of on one side so that it will get caramelized, and then we're going to flip them over and put more sauce on it. That way you get more sauce that's caramelized on each piece. Just gonna move it over. All right. But you could throw these on a grill and baste as you go as well. Okay, we're going to stick them under the broiler for about 5 to 7 minutes.
Wow, and that's only
Looking
one
good.
side.
Yep, flipping them over now. If you want, you can always double the amount of sauce as well, so you have more to pour over afterwards. Did you guys notice I was good today and used aluminum foil instead of parchment paper under the broiler?
Uh-oh, Flo, I think you're running
See?
short.
Told ya. Being too liberal. Ta-da!
Perfect.
And a smidge to spare. All right, going back under the broiler for another 5 to 7 minutes. All right, just as good as being on a grill.
Wow.
Okay, maybe not, but,
No, but
it
still
will do.
looking good.
I'm just going to transfer it onto a plate. Right, don't forget the garnish. Oh my goodness, it looks so good. It's going to taste amazing. We're going to get started with our marinade. I have 3.5-ish cloves of garlic, and I actually need 6, but I forgot to buy garlic. Don't you hate it when that happens? But that's okay. We're going to substitute with something else. Oh my goodness, I'm like a gong show today. And you can mince with a knife if you like. This is just easier. This is the only thing that we are needing to chop up or cut up. So I'm just going to use my garlic press. Not having enough fresh garlic is an easy fix here. I can just use garlic powder. So you want about 1/8 of a teaspoon for each clove of garlic that you're missing. In this case, I'm going to add about 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder to 3 cloves of garlic. And that will give you about 6 cloves of garlic. Also adding a teaspoon of a 5-spice powder. And Chinese 5-spice powder is a combination of 5 different spices. I believe they are star anise, cinnamon, cloves, fennel seed, and peppercorn. And you can just purchase 5-spice powder in the markets. You don't have to make it yourself. I don't. And 1/2 teaspoon of ground white pepper. Also adding 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce. Two tablespoons of hoisin sauce. And the flavors are quite different, so I wouldn't substitute one for the other. Hoisin sauce is kind of like a sweet, well, hoisin actually stands for seafood sauce, and it's quite sweet. it just has a very different flavor than the oyster sauce. Oyster sauce is more salty, and it doesn't really taste like oyster, but it does add that extra umami that we're looking for when we're making Chinese dishes. Also adding 2 tablespoons of soy sauce and 2 tablespoons of Shaoxing wine. And Shaoxing wine is just a cooking rice wine, and if you don't have Shaoxing wine, you can use just regular rice wine. Or we've been known to use bourbon in the past. You can use a dry sherry or sake, just something that will add the extra flavor that we're looking for here. Also adding a ½ cup of sugar. I know it's a lot, but this recipe is sweet. And 4 teaspoons of salt. And I'm using kosher salt here. I'm making a lot here, guys, so that's why there seems to be a lot of ingredients here. And lastly, 1 teaspoon of sesame oil. All right, we're going to stir this and mix it up. And before we start marinating the ribs, I'm going to save a 1/4 cup, and this is going to be for the glaze after. So I did lie a little bit. We do have to cut up the pork ribs. I am using 2 racks of pork back ribs, and this is about 5½ pounds. We're going to take the silver skin off the back, which is fairly easy to do. And this just allows for the marinade to soak into the ribs a little bit better on the backside. Just gonna cut in between the bones, if I can find it. Sometimes with back ribs, it's hard to tell exactly where it is. I'm just gonna toss them into the bowl with the marinade.
Looks like you got the smaller bowl this time.
I thought it was the biggest one, but it's not. Anyways, I'm gonna stick my hands in here and I'm gonna move the marinade around to make sure that all the ribs are in fact coated in this marinade. I know it doesn't look like much, but you don't need much to marinate. That's why I find like those recipes that you make so much marinade and you don't need that much. Every piece of meat just needs a little bit. Look, I did it. Everything's covered.
That's a major accomplishment, Flo.
All right, we're going to cover this and put it in the fridge and let it marinate for about an hour. And you can marinate it up to overnight. The longer you let it marinate, the more flavorful it's gonna be. All right, we're done marinating. I can't tell you how good this smells already, and we haven't even done anything yet. I have about a cup of water in my pressure cooker, and I've added a rack, and I'm just gonna put my ribs right on top. And I find that the electric pressure cooker actually does a really good job with ribs. You can cook them in like 15 minutes of cook time. And this is a 6-quart pot, so I know all my ribs can fit in there because I know 2 racks of ribs can fit easily in here. See? There's still a little bit of marinade at the bottom there.
All right. Nice job.
You're putting the lid on, making sure the sealing knob is on sealing. And we're going to pressure cook it on high for 15 minutes. Why can't I see the buttons? Oh, here. And we like our meat to have a little bit of tug on the ribs. So if you want it to be more fall off the bone, then I would put it in for 18 minutes. While the ribs are cooking, I'm going to prepare my glaze. Remember, we had saved a 1/4 cup of the marinade, and I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of honey. You can probably tell that the sauce or the marinade is not red like the char siu that you find in the barbecue shops. And my recipe is probably more like the Malaysian style char siu marinade. Well, I'm assuming, because the best char siu we've ever had was in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. They really do have such delicious char siu, and their char siu is not red like the ones that we find here. So I'm just letting you know, it's still a super, super tasty. I don't know what makes it red, but it doesn't matter to me. I'm also adding 2 tablespoons of water. And that's it. Once the ribs are done, we're going to glaze them and throw them under the broiler.
All right, the timer is up.
All right, quick releasing the pressure. All right, here we go. It smells amazing. All right, I know they don't look like much right now, but they will. Right, we're going to put these on a sheet pan. I have a full-size sheet pan here. And I lined it with some parchment paper. You know, so long as you have your parchment paper not sticking up, it should be fine under the broiler. But to be safe, you can always use aluminum foil.
And for our friends in the UK, aluminium.
Just gonna use a baster and baste on the sauce. And we're gonna stick these under the broiler for 3 to 5 minutes on each side. All right, 3 to 5 minutes under the broiler. All right, that was 5 minutes. All right, so now we want to do the other side. And use whatever marinade is remaining. Another 3 to 5 minutes on the other side. All right. Okay, this was 4 minutes on the other side. I know you can't wait to dig in, dude. If you don't want to put them under the broiler, you can always throw these on the grill and they will be amazing.